Wow. So that was a surprisingly fascinating movie, I gotta say. Alice, Sweet Alice from 1976, another film knocked out. And this is one that is definitely a cult classic, but is not known probably by many unless you're a horror fan. And even then, I would say it's somewhat of a deep cut in the horror genre per se. I mean, it is on the list of the 100 must see horror films. Personally, I had heard of it, but I did not know what the movie was about or what the premise was. And it is I guess it's a psychological slasher film from the mid 70s. And I mean, slasher films pre Halloween to me are always interesting because, a lot of the slashers after Halloween were pretty formulaic, pretty not boring, but simple. And, you're just kind of banking on exceptional kills and maybe a unique or standout killer. Otherwise, they're kind of usually pretty dull and I don't want to say lame, but kind of dime a dozen. You're not going to get anything too crazy. And I mean, there are hundreds of slasher films from the 80s that are more or less fitting that bill. Some stand out, The Burning, Slumber Party Massacre, Friday the 13th, shit like that. But there's a lot of balance. Anyway, Alice, Sweet Alice is not like that at all. So let me just say this, right? So I watched Alice, Sweet Alice all the way through, and I had questions. And so I looked through the Wikipedia article just to get a brief run through because there were some things in this movie that didn't make sense. And so after reading through it and picking up on some of the things or thinking more about some of the things I just watched, I gotta say I definitely respect this movie even more, right? So because initially viewing, I went into this movie as I was watching it thinking, okay, interesting. This is a movie about a child killer, a female child killer. Gave me kind of Halloween 2007 vibes, like a young female Michael Myers, and it's about this little girl who puts on this mask and this raincoat and kills people. Right? That's what I thought. And at the beginning of the movie, there's a title, like a subtitle that says like 1961. And I thought that for like the first 40 minutes, I thought it was about this girl, Alice, who had, I think at that point, killed like two people, right? She had killed her sister, Karen. She had strangled her with a crucifix. Pretty cool. Well, not really cool, but interesting, right? And then she had also attempted to kill her aunt, right? And everything in the movie had led you to believe that. And I was expecting there to be a flashback because the movie is an hour and 40 minutes long. 40-minute long. I expected there to be a push forward in time, and she was going to be like some fleshed out, like psychopath, kind of like I said, Halloween 2007, the remake. But there wasn't. And the time text, I think, is supposed to be a bit of a red herring, just like the whole movie was, right? And I gotta say, the movie it's pretty dull if you are not aware of the massive red herring that actually duped me, and I gotta respect the maker of this film, the director, and I definitely give him props because at the beginning of the movie you see Alice, the girl, dress up in the killer's attire and scare her little sister, right, and threaten her. Later on, you see that a figure, you anticipate it's Alice, you assume it's Alice, strangle that girl, or her sister Karen, and then, as the movie progresses, you see that character once again, attempting to kill the aunt character, who was really torn up about Karen's death and had blamed Alice for the death. So you think that it's only logical that not only does the character look like the figure that killed Karen, but I mean, it only makes sense that since Alice was being blamed for the death and Alice appeared to be the one who killed Karen, it would only be logical that Alice went after her aunt, right? Because she was mad at her and she blamed her for Karen's death. And that's what seems to be the truth, right? Because Alice gets sent to a mental hospital, right? And there's an interesting part of the movie where she is interrogated. She gets a lie detector test, and she passes with like an asterisk because she says she's asked if she knows who did it, and she says no, but she lied, or she says yes rather, but she's deemed not lie. There's a bit of a not a disconnect there, but it's a little confusing, and it made me think for a minute. So I was like, that's kind of weird. And then father comes out of nowhere, right? Starts investigating. He ends up getting killed by the figure, and that part really confused the shit out of me, because ends up being this old woman from the very beginning of the movie that I didn't even pick up on, the housekeeper. And she ends up going like sick house on him. I will say the kills in this movie, they're pretty weak, right? For a film that's considered a slasher, the kills are not that good. But I don't think the kills, despite this movie being a slasher, right? I don't think the kills are the highlight. I think the deception of this movie and the commentary it has on Catholicism. It's another one of those religious movies where there's a lot of rhetoric surrounding that in the church, and also about women and how they are viewed, I guess, familially, and as a matriarch and stuff like that, because there's a lot of focus on Alice's mom, and the fact that she doesn't have a father in her life. Alice doesn't, and then he comes in. But yeah, the housekeeper, right? She kills Alice's father, right? Who we like, good character. And at the end of the movie, she ends up being revealed as the one who has been doing it all along, right? And as I saw this happening, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was genuinely confused whenever there was the reveal that the character who attacked Alice's father was the maid. I was like, wait, what? I had to go back to the beginning of the movie to see, oh yeah, she appears very briefly. Yeah. So, because like the first hour of the movie, it focuses on a young girl who is seemingly psychotic, and her like trials and tribulations of going back and forth between her parents and the psychiatric evaluators, and like people are trying to deal with this psychotic adolescent child in the 70s, right? But then it just completely flips on its head, and I think that that's so fascinating, right? I think this story is really, really cool. The execution it's okay. It's decent, right? I don't think the gore, nor do I think the violence is all that impressive. I would say it's a little weak, but I would say I'd definitely like to watch this movie a second time at some point, because it threw me for a loop, right? The ending is a little confusing, where she stabs the father of the church in the neck whenever he kind of like denies her the communion wafer or whatever, and the cops are there ready to arrest her because the detective saw her kill a guy, one of my favorite characters I've seen in any of the movies that I've watched lately. This great big fat guy who is like their landlord in the apartment building that they all live in. That fucking dude is the fattest guy I've seen in any movie pre-2000, other than Fat Bastard. I swear to God, he is the fattest piece of shit I've ever seen in a fucking movie. Holy shit. He just does not look real. Like, he looks like a millennial neckbeard. Very fucking strange. Had to say that. That guy was definitely a highlight of the movie. But yeah, the ending is a little confusing. I don't know the symbolism there with the knife, because once she gets apprehended, Alice grabs the knife and like puts it in the bag. I don't know, but you know, this movie, the biggest strengths of this movie, though, I would say, is the story's deception, and how it truly is executed, and it caught me off guard. It fooled me. It tricked me. And looking back, you know, I gotta say it was pretty seamless. Like, in the scenes, I did not realize that, you know, it wasn't in fact Alice, because all indications as I was watching led me to think that it was. But I you know, I haven't rewatched it, but if I go back and rewatch it knowing that Alice is in fact not the killer, I'd be interested to see how closely, you know, I would be able to tell that, okay, this movie does a good job of keeping it stealthy, keeping the killer's complete identity somewhat ambiguous. And so, yeah, I would say its strength, like I said, I like the story. All in all, though, the movie is not, it's a little dull. I think it is a clever story, though. I do. The kills, unfortunately, for it being a horror movie, they're not that great. They're really not that great. The acting is a little choppy in some instances, but I can absolutely understand the cult following that this movie has. I like it. Do I think it's a good movie? Ugh, I don't know. All things considered. Would I recommend it to horror fans? Yes, I would. I would love to see what people think of this movie. Would I recommend it to casual fans of film? Yeah, I think I would. Would I recommend it to friends of mine? Yeah, I think I would. You know, I think this movie, the first time I watched it without like looking back and observing things, because I was pretty confused, I was left with kind of an taste in my mind, in my mouth. But once I, you know, went back and rewatched a few things and looked into some of the background of this film, I was definitely more impressed, right? And I'm gonna give this movie, I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like I've touched ad nauseum about how I like the story and the deception. I think the only thing is the film itself could use a little tuning. Like I said, the acting was a little choppy at times. The pacing was okay, but honestly, I mean, the kills and kind of the meat of the movie, I think is kind of its downfall. But I absolutely love how clever Alice Sweet Alice was. Underrated, and it's a deserving cult classic. I don't know, 3.5 out of 5 though. Pretty good.